From the dark recesses of my unconscious mind into the glaring light of objective reality, you are listening to the Dark Mind Podcast. Hello, everyone. This is your host, Vincent Midgard, and I've got a great show for you today. If you're following the Infernal Council series, and hopefully you are, Episode 3 is bounced and loaded and ready for human consumption, so make sure to check that out. Today's guest is a podcaster, writer, and lover of all things horror, sci-fi, and sometimes fantasy. He's the host of the GeanerikC Podcast and also has some writing projects in the works. So without further ado, join me as we delve into the dark insight of Generic. Generic, welcome to the show.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good. We've been communicating back and forth online for a while, so it's good to be able to sit down and shoot the proverbial shit with you for a while.
Hell yeah, man! It's always good to sit down and talk some different kinds of shop or whatever. So,
and thank you for being here as well, because I know how busy you are right now.
Yeah, the schedule's just kind of ramped up, got a little bit crazy. So,
Yes, indeed. So, your tagline is all things horror, sci-fi, and sometimes fantasy. What inspired you one day to just say, you know, I love these genres so much that I'm just going to start a podcast?
So I mean, a lot of it, like, so I have like the blog and the, I guess it's like a blog and a website. It's just kind of like a tester kind of thing. But we had to, so I've taken this creative writing class, and it was about, just setting everything up for, when you get out of school, and you kind of want to just like have like a reader audience already. And I had been listening to a couple different podcasts, and a lot of them is very specific to, okay, we're just going to talk about horror genre and film, or we're just going to talk about science fiction and like literature or something, or same with fantasy. And so we had this assignment where we needed to start a website or a blog in WordPress. And so I saw that there was an additional attachment for Anchor, which is, I guess they work in conjunction with each other.
I've seen a lot of people work with Anchor. Is that a host?
Yeah. So I guess like, I go on there and I upload all my different content and everything there, and they host it and give the RSS feed and everything.
Okay. Anyway.
So I saw that and I was like, well, all right, well, I need to do this assignment, but like, I don't want to get just like feedback from students or whatever, so I'll see if anybody's even interested in reading my stuff. And then I was like, well, this Anchor thing is free, so why not? So I was just like, okay, so it's like, I'll figure out what I want to talk about. And, I've always been really interested in those three genres, fantasy, sci-fi, and horror, because a lot of the different stories that come out of those genres are often pretty intertwined. I know there's like a lot of times when I bring up horror, people will say, oh, like I love slasher films, but there's a lot more to it, right? And then especially with horror, it can be like, it could be super subtle and kind of more just like, I don't know, like a disturbing kind of, I don't feel correct watching this, to, I mean, something like, just like completely bonkers, like The Sadness on Shudder. I don't know if anybody hasn't seen that, they need to go see that.
Yes, definitely try to catch that while it's still on Shudder, because I don't know where else to find that.
So yeah, I mean, that's like the main reason. I was just like, I'll try out the podcasting thing. I'll try out blogging and everything, and it was going well. I mean, nothing has gone anywhere as far as like deciding not to do anything. I think it's just a matter of time right now, and everything's gotten like super busy. So, I mean, some of the things are on hold for now, but I mean, I'm definitely going to be coming back to podcasting and everything else.
So I remember reading on your blog, as well as hearing you speak about the fact that you were raised Pentecostal.
Yeah.
I was raised Assemblies of God, which is pretty similar to the Pentecostal church. And one of the ways they're similar is they both preach the hellfire damnation narrative. And so when I was growing up, I was always told to stay away from worldly things, especially horror movies and the occult, because it was like this open door that would allow the devil to come in. So when you have authority figures telling you not to do something, you want to do exactly that. So
Right.
I was curious to know whether you think your religious upbringing had anything to do with your predilection for the dark side of things. Like, was it completely organic that you were just drawn to it, or was it, I assume in the Pentecostal church, they probably told you the same thing they told me, is like, you got to steer clear of that stuff. It's an open doorway for the devil and so forth.
Oh man. I mean, it's definitely a bit of both. I mean, the stuff that I grew up watching, was like, it was like cheesy stuff, you know, like I watched, a lot of like kaiju films and, you know, like Godzilla and like Monster X from outer space and like, different kinds of like black and white horror films and everything. And, I think it's like a combination of that. And then like, you know, like Alien and Predator, when they came out, would like sneak those films. Cause that was getting into the territory of like this is too much. You can't do it, you know? And it's like, you look at those movies now and you're like, man, it was scary back then, I guess, but it's like, it's super cheesy, yeah. But you love it. But yeah, I mean, like the church it was always kind of a weird thing growing up. I particularly didn't like it because, a lot of the times when I would go, even as a kid, they would pretty much just say like, this is how it is. And like, that's it. Mm-hmm. There's no rebuttal or anything like that. But for anybody who's, you know, just gone through and read the entire Bible, like there's a lot of like, most of the stories in the Bible are horror stories. There's people going out and doing things and like terrible things happen to them. And granted, like a lot of them are, you know, they're more in the way of being like, you know, if you don't look out for certain things and you live a certain type of way, you know, you are putting yourself in harm's way. But when you look at a lot of horror stories, I mean, they're basically doing the same thing. You know, they're just like, this is the setting for this story. These people went out, you know, and they just like, you know, they decided to go to this haunted house and like, probably shouldn't have gone to that haunted house. And then terrible things happened to them. So it's like, there's really not much difference, I felt, watching a lot of that stuff. I mean, am I going to go out and like stab somebody and like dress up in some kind of like weird costume or like do some other like depraved act? Like, no, like that's not what I'm going to do. And I think that's what a lot of the people that are like super religious, they're just like, yep, that stuff's gonna like, you're gonna wake up one day and you're gonna have like 12 demons in you and you're gonna go eat all the baby children and everything. And it's like, nah, man, like that's not gonna happen. So, I mean, I kind of grew away from it until I moved down, to Texas. And then, you know, like if I have the opportunity, I'll still go to church. But I always like to ask like the why questions, you know, like, how well are these people just like reading a Bible and like following religion, or is this stuff that like they're really practicing, like they have like some faith to it, you know, like even some of the stuff, like if you look at, if you go in the Bible and you look at some of the stuff that like Jesus had to go through, some of like the different trials and tribulations that he went through, is just like, they're horrific, you know, and like, but like he still didn't break character, you know? Mm-hmm. So it's like, you could write the most like absurd, most violent thing ever and still be like the nicest person in the world. So I think that there's always that like stigma of like, oh, well, if you listen to like heavy metal or like, you know, you watch violent films or you like violent stuff, then like you're going to hell. And it's like, I don't really think like that's not the message that was trying to be relayed. You know, by like, I don't think Jesus was going around being like, you're all going to hell. You're terrible people. Like, no, he was there. He was like, oh, you're hurt, like, let me help you out. Or like, oh, like you're having like difficulties in life, well, let's talk about it. And then like somehow it's morphed into this weird, like,
yeah, I guess
very cut and dry kind of thing,
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I guess it depends on the, are you focusing on the Gospels? Are you focusing on the epistles, which were written by the apostles? And every church seems to have their own amalgamation of different concepts that they piece together. You've got the prosperity gospel that's all about, you do this, you make some money.
yeah, it's a weird setup when you get into it, So, I mean, for the most part, I kind of just stay away from church, but like the whole like faithful thing, I believe that's a little bit more important than just, going to church and meeting a whole bunch of judgy people.
Yeah. Being more spiritual than religious.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was listening to your second episode of the Generic Podcast, where you were speaking with Tyler Geis. And I remember a salient point that he made was how movies were a reflection of the times. And the example he gave was like in the 80s, we had Nancy Reagan telling everyone to say no to drugs or you'll die. And then we were in the throes of the AIDS epidemic. So everybody's being told abstain from sex or you'll die. So in 80s horror movies, what was happening to the camp counselors that were doing drugs and having sex? They all died. So which movies were coming out when you were growing up that were a reflection of the zeitgeist of the times? Because I think you're a few years younger than me, right?
Yeah. So I think I'm 34.
34.
I'm always bad with that.
Yeah.
34. Yeah. Man, that's a kind of hard question to answer because like my parents were pretty strict, so I didn't really get into watching horror films probably until 2004, 2003, somewhere around there.
Well, it's not just necessarily horror movies, just any movies being a reflection of the times.
Well, I think one of the biggest ones is like, so you had like when Columbine happened, you had like a lot of movies that were coming out during that time that kind of like, I don't want to say they shied away from gun violence, but I feel like it's kind of like a catalyst, right? Like, I mean, by the time I started getting into like films that I could really start watching that were in like the horror and sci-fi genre, I think like one of the biggest ones for me, that was showing that kind of reflection of how humanity was at that point would be The Matrix. That one always really stood out to me because it's like you have just like over the top gun violence and it's like just in your face. And I remember like when that movie came out and everyone was like, this is the most like violent movie I've ever seen. Yeah. And like, in a lot of the interviews, they wouldn't go out and just be like, oh, well, like we have all these school shootings and everything. And it's like, just like, like with the one that we unfortunately just had here over the past week. But I think that was kind of like that was an era that kind of started that like whole over the tops, like kind of super violent films. And then I guess between that one and then Hostel were like two of the biggest ones as far as mainstays. And then of course, like I was always a huge anime fan as well. So that was something that I could get away with because it's drawing. So it's got to be for children, right? Yeah. So Ghost in the Shell and Akira are two of the films that I think are still very poignant. They were then and they are now, as far as, looking at where we are now and then being like, this is where we want to be in the future. And, you have like all this futuristic robotics going on and you still have that like over the top violence going on in both of them. And then you have that whole kind of question of like, like what is it to be alive and to be a person? So I would say probably those four films during like, like that like 1992 to like early 2000s era, those four always really stood out to me as far as like, there's a lot of relevancy to them and juxtaposition between real life and then what's going on the screen.
Yeah, it's funny. When I first saw The Matrix, I thought, I was like, man, the Wachowski well, they were the Wachowski brothers back then. I think they're the Wachowski sisters right now. But I was thinking, man, they are just, that's amazing to come up with such a crazy scenario. And then I found out much later that that's actually a philosophical theory that we are all possibly in a computer program. And that actually, I think, is kind of what spurred me into studying philosophy. Like my narrative fiction that I do, you know, a lot of times the characters wax philosophical, and it's kind of a reflection of my reading habits. But I was kind of like you. I wasn't really allowed to watch movies. You know, I would sneak over to my friend's house. That's how I saw Pulp Fiction for the first time. Sorry, Mom. But so mostly what I dealt with, or what I was consuming when I was that age, was I was sneaking CDs of the evil rock music. And so I remember the 90s, the grunge movement was all about, you know, I think that's when the latchkey kids finally started feeling that angst, that like sense of abandonment, and really started feeding into the grunge movement and the I always screw this word up, romanticization, is that right? Of self-destruction. So the art that I was familiar with from my coming of age was music, because it seemed like it was easier to sneak CDs and listen to music than it was to actually get a movie to a television somewhere where you could watch it without somebody walking in on you. So
yeah, you'd have to get one of those like little portable DVD players or something.
Yeah,
just kind of
and those were expensive back then.
Yeah,
you could watch stuff on your phone now, but back then, man, they were big clunky blocks that you had to take out a loan to get. So I noticed that 2 episodes of your podcast in particular featured authors that were writers of extreme horror, which, you know, I kind of glommed onto. The French extremist movement is my jam. Do you feel like good horror movie needs to have that extremity of violence, or are you fine with something like The Witch, where it's more of a slow burn that keeps you in a state of anxiety?
You know, I'm always more of like, if the shoe fits kind of thing, you know, like if you want to take it the extreme route. So it's weird when it comes to like extreme stuff, like the more either the more serious you are, or the more extreme you are. Like anytime you're going to one of those like absolute levels in a genre, as long as you're doing it well, which includes like, so like say if it's going to be an extreme horror and it's like super gory, if the gore matches the tone and the reason of why that's happening in that narrative, I think it'll work. But when like you have like a super serious film, like the Witch, for instance, and you took if you borrowed some like the comedic value from like Get Out, it just wouldn't work, you know, because it's like you're setting that tone, so that bar is already set. So I think a lot of it is like you get the story nailed down right as far as what do you want this character to go through, and what are their character arcs going to look like, and then you build up everything based around that. So yeah, I mean, I think extreme horror really, it can work in a couple ways. I mean, it could just be like bonkers, off the wall, just like, you know, you stab somebody in the cheek and it's like a Mortal Kombat wound or something, you know, it's just like gushing everywhere for like no reason at all. And you're like, okay, it's extreme horror, but it has like a silly side to it. And then there's the extreme horror, like a lot of the stuff that Aaron Beauregard is putting out.
I've got to check him out.
There's some scenes in some of his stuff where I'm like, okay, I have to take a second. Judas Sonnet is really good at doing that too. And then the first film that I think I saw was either Saw or Hostel, which like back then was like, you know, I just wasn't expecting it, but they have like those like beginning scenes. And I think one of the things that helps narratives along is that beginning structure of like, this is what you're getting into. So it's like, that's when you're setting the tone, right? So if I sit down and I read something or I start watching something and I'm like, okay, this is extreme horror and they're setting up this super serious tone and then the rest of it is extreme horror comedy, I'm gonna be pretty pissed off. Be like, like what is this? You know, you get like it would be like if you started Hostel and then went into like Killer Clowns from Outer Space was like the rest of the film.
Actually, I don't know. That'd be kind of cool. just completely throw you off. Like, what the hell is that?
It's instead of in Prague, they're on a spaceship somewhere and they're getting turned into cotton candy and chopped up or something into like lollipops or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
If somebody makes that into a movie, give me credit.
Yeah. Copyright. So I remember I talked to you about this a while back. Have you seen Martyrs yet? Did you ever end up?
I still haven't seen it. I've been doing this thing where like I'm putting out different articles on my blog that, you know, talk about different movies and shows that I'm watching. But the hardest thing about that, right, is like now like the amount of time that I have to like actually focus on other things is so limited that I haven't really been able to sit down and watch a lot of films 100% the whole way through. So I've been trying to like stay up and watch films when I get home from work, which is at like, you know, 11:30, 12 at night. And then, you know, I have to get up at 4:30 to get ready for work. So it's like, so a lot of times it's like, if I'm going to do that, it has to be on a Saturday night, going into Sunday. Sunday is like my major homework day. So it's like, I'm still getting up 4:30, 5 o'clock. Yeah, but it's sitting in my queue. It's ready to go.
Actually, are you talking about your Shutter queue?
I think they took it. I think they took it off Shutter, right?
Say, if it's in your Shutter queue, it's no longer there, unfortunately.
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's on Mubi, Mubi, or okay. I think that's the one. Is that one or something else? I have like a couple other ones that, surprisingly, my mother sent me a few of them, like after my dad passed away, last year. And then like, she got like super big into horror, which was like weird. Like she hit me up one day and she was just like, yeah, like I watched all the Aliens films. And I'm like, wait, what? And then she was like, yeah. And then like, you know, I started reading like some Daniel Volpe, and I'm like, what? Like what? I'm like, where are you? Who are you? Like, are you all right?
She's been listening to your podcast. It's like, this is my baby. He told me to read this and watch this.
Yeah, so she's been giving me recommendations. I've had like other people that have been reading my stuff and giving me recommendations and stuff, and like wanting to get like wanting to see what I think about it or whatever. So it's like I have like my regular watch list, and then I have another watch list that is like all just recommendations of like shows and books and all this sort of kind of stuff. And I'm like, man, like some days I wake up and I'm like, man, I just want to like not go to work and just like get through this stuff and then like put all this stuff out for everybody to check out. But no, like Martyrs is definitely, it's up there on my watch list. And that's like one of the issues too. It's like, so when I went to go watch it, I think I like missed it by like a week.
Oh yeah.
On Shudder, and because I was like, I have time. Like I chunked out some time, and I was like, I'm gonna watch, because I wanted to watch that and a couple other films, and that was like the first one on the list. And I was like, I couldn't find it, and I'm like, I could have sworn it was on here. So
yeah, that's one of those movies where, you know, kind of like I was asking if you need like that extremity of violence in a horror movie for it to be good. If I had watched that movie and it did not have that one part right at the end where, I mean, it literally lasts less than a minute. It's kind of like in The Sadness, where that virologist takes a minute to explain what's going on with what everybody's experiencing. I can't just watch mindless violence. It has to have a psychological element to it. It has to make sense. And that's one of the things about Martyrs is after you watch it for, you know, I forget even how long that movie is, but you watch this woman get systematically tortured. And after a while, you start feeling bad about yourself. You're like, why the hell am I sitting here watching this shit? You know, and then at the end, it's all tied together so perfectly with this beautiful bow, you know. Anybody listening, I just cannot recommend watching that movie enough. We watched a movie like what I was talking about, just kind of mindless violence. Me and my fiance, it was Frontiers. Have you ever seen that?
I have not. No.
Yeah. It's
what's the sound?
It wasn't great. We didn't finish it. My fiance was like, I don't know if I can follow this through to the end, because I liked it the first time I saw it when it was called Hostel. So I was like, yeah, you got a point. So we didn't even end up finishing that one. But while we're on the subject of violence, can we talk about the sadness? You had a very interesting blog post on that.
Yeah.
Anybody listening, check out his blog post on the sadness. Generic Writing.
Yes, please do.
WordPress.
So the sadness was pretty interesting, because a lot of the times, like, I'll go on and I'll try and find a lot of foreign horror films. I might not necessarily get to watch them at all, but every now and then, like, I'll see one and I gotta track this down, and I gotta go and see this. And so I saw a trailer for The Sadness. It was like one of the Red Band trailers, and I was like super confused because it said it was out already. And I'm like, I have never heard of this film before. And like, I go and I'm like searching for it and everything, and come to find out that it had it had come out the year before. So it came out in 2021, and it was going through different film festivals and everything. And it was, I learned that it was, it's making its way around. So I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one, but I reached out to Shudder, and I was like, dude, y'all gonna pick this film up, right? And I didn't get a response from them or anything, but like, I just kept like, spamming them. I was like, just, can you pick this up? Like, I want to see this. So finally they picked it up, and I watched it. And then, so I already knew from the trailer that it was going to be super gory. So I was on board. But the big thing with the sadness that really got me hooked on it is that these zombies they're still human, and they're more human than any other sort of zombie film that I've seen. Like, it's not like the stereotypical, they're not looking for brains or anything. Like, they're going to rip you apart and torture you and sodomize you or whatever else they can. It's like all the, I guess, like I think the way the doctor explained it is like talking about like the pineal gland and like the different kinds of chemicals it releases, and how it basically, it boosts your dopamine to a super high level and makes you want to like do all the depraved things that like you would want to do, but you're like, nope, can't do that. It's not right.
He describes it as somehow hijacking the limbic system, which is like your...
Oh, yes, that's what it was.
Which is like your regulator. It keeps all of those base desires in check, and it just completely short circuits that. And then I guess, like you're saying, makes it to where you kind of have the affinity for dopamine that an addict would have.
Yeah. So they're just like, they're fully conscious doing this stuff. And so like one of the first things that, one of like the symptoms is like they start crying, which I thought was interesting. So it's like, I feel like maybe that's like some kind of like psychological breakdown where they're like, no, like I'm trying to not do these things. And like, like that, like short-lived breakdown of like, crap, like I can't fight this anymore. And then they go into their transformation, and it's quick, it's not like you're getting bit and it takes a little bit for like the virus to run through and do everything. It's like, one moment you are A-okay, and the next moment you're like ripping someone's head off and fucking it. Like, it's just,
spoiler alert.
Yeah. Like, and I think like one of the other things that really got me with that film is that I think they use less than 1%, like digital effects. Like everything that they did is practical effects. And I am a huge fan of films that do that kind of approach. Like, what is it? Gorman used that. That's another movie on Shudder. If anybody wants to see another one, I think it's called like PG or something. Psycho Gorman. But it's just like that kind of like, it's excessive violence, but like it didn't really feel at any point where I was just like, this is hilarious. Like, it's pretty chilling. And then, like the people that like you don't like in the film, they get what's coming to them. Just like I think the way that they portray the violence in that film is just, it'll keep you coming back if that's like the kind of stuff that you're into. So,
yeah. Yeah, I feel the same way about liking their concept of the zombie. It's not like they're the undead. They are actually still human. And I think the way the virologist described it was just as it's overtaking you, they can feel the fact that they no longer have the ability to withstand these horrible urges they have. So they start immediately feeling remorse because they know what they're about to do right before it shuts off. And then there's no more empathy, no more remorse. They just turn into raging psychopaths. And I still didn't get the virologist himself. Like what you were talking about, the transformation is almost immediate. It seemed like he was in some sort of gradual progression.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that had something to do with him tinkering with the virus or...
I think there's always, well, not always, but in ones where they start involving a scientist or a virologist or something, with Dr. Perkins and Resident Evil, they did that where he was messing around with the virus or whatever. And he wound up injecting himself and turning into like this abominable creature that just kept like mutating. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of feel like virologists and doctors in those kind of films, when they're like either in a small team or like there's that one person, and it's just like you have to start wondering, it's like, well, are they infected? And it's just like for some reason slowly eating away at him versus everybody else where it's just like going at him directly. Or is it that they're like mental health is just depleted because of like they're just devoting all this time into something that they're studying, and then like their mannerisms and everything are just kind of starting to pattern the same thing that they're fighting. So I did sort of kind of get that feeling, like I was, especially in that film, like because everybody's cognizant of what they're doing, and I was just like, well, his eyes are normal. Mm-hmm. Like maybe he has like a new strain of it or something, especially since that film came out during the pandemic era. So it would have been interesting if it was something like, it's like, this is the regular virus, this is the regular COVID. And now we have whatever version we're on now, 6.2 COVID or something. I don't know what the hell they're doing now, but it could have been something like that. I think one of the scenes though that really got to me in that film, was the one where in the basketball court he's trying to save that guy. I'm not going to go any further than that for anybody that hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah.
But that gives you like the whole package of like people are into some weird stuff, and then also that movie is super violent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's that was another, I don't know if it's would spoil anything by me saying it, but that explanation he gave of how, like in a normal zombie movie, everybody, you can pretty much tell who the zombies are. They're walking around looking like they're the undead. But the quote unquote zombies in The Sadness, they, like the traditional zombie, don't mess with anybody but non-zombies. And there's not much of an explanation for that in a normal zombie movie, but in this, it's like they only go for those that haven't turned or haven't caught the virus because they want the person to suffer. And if you've turned, not only are you not suffering, you're enjoying it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the kind of it feels like it's loosely based on that kind of like cognizant prey versus predator thing, right? Mm-hmm. So like they're going after anybody who's running away. Mm-hmm. Or like, if they know that you're freaked out, like they'll torture you, before they even kill you or whatever. But zombies, in most zombie films, like it doesn't matter if you're standing still, running or whatever, like I guess maybe they can just smell the virus on you, or they just know or something. I'm not quite sure, but, in The Sadness, you're in that like cognizant kind of state where it's just like, yep, like you said, like we're we're just going to torture everybody and have fun with it. And, maybe leave you to get turned or something. But yeah, I mean, it's just a completely other kind of ruthless zombie that like I have personally not seen before. So am kind of curious as to how the virus works though, because like I don't think at any point in time I saw someone get bit and then they turned. Mm-hmm. So it's got to be something either
maybe
it's either it's got to be bloodborne or airborne. Yeah. So pretty aggressive virus.
Yeah, definitely. So you also had a write-up on The Platform, which was a very interesting movie. Again, listeners, check that out. What were your thoughts on just the premise in general?
Well, I guess it was supposed to be like a kind of jail, and like if you go in there, your sentence gets reduced. As just 100% just bizarre. Like I don't see how a system like that could help correct anyone's behavior. If anything, it's reinforcing. Yeah, it's just reinforcing all like the depraved behavior of people. So as far as like an aspect of real life, like if they were to, I don't think they would ever do anything like that. Well, plus, I mean, you can't have a floating platform, right? Like that just, that was bizarre in and of itself. But I think one of the things that really stood out to me about that film is a lot of what I talk about in my blog post as well, is the exploration that takes, right? And how it explores the different characters and what they're going through. But a lot of that film just doesn't make sense. Like they're like, oh, there's not supposed to be a little girl in here, but yet there is. And it's just like, well, if they were going to put you in there, they had to gas you, right? Because that's how they move you around all the different levels. So they put that gas in there and then they move you around, which is like, who knows how they even get in there, because it seems like the only way to do that would be riding the platform up and down. Yeah. Unless there's like some secret doors that nobody has found or whatever, if it's like something like the cube. But it was, as far as like the practical side of it goes, like I just don't think it wouldn't hold up. Yeah. Like if I remember correctly,
was it like it was some sort of societal experiment, right? It wasn't a penal institution per se. Mm-hmm. It was not only a study, but it was also, I think you could get a degree, which just seems odd.
Yeah.
I guess because you're taking part of a study.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was like the main character. I don't remember his name now. I think it was like Gregor or something. That's definitely not his name. We're going to call him Gregor because my memory is terrible. So when he's sitting there and he's talking to his bunkmate, like the first one that he has, and he's just like, yeah, I got put in here on my own volition, and they told me that they'll reduce my sentence, and I have the opportunity to get a degree. So like, I was always trying to figure out what the hell, like, what is he talking about, like the degree? But I guess that's just from whatever kind of experiment that they're running. But the other guy, he gets pissed off because he's just like, well, I'm in here for murder, and they didn't give me that option. So it seems like some of them are volunteers and some of them are not. Like that lady that went in, and she's like, I've worked with this place for 16 years and now I'm in here. And, she has no idea what the hell is really going on in there. Like she's just like filling the paperwork out and being like, oh, like this is what it's like in there. Like, you sure you want to do this? And he's like, yeah. So I did think it was interesting that it's like some of the people that are in there voluntarily. Like you said, like not everybody is in there because of the penal system. They're in there doing this whole experiment, which is also kind of weird because you never see anybody actually watching them. It's just the whole experience of what's going on inside of the platform areas. So.
Yeah, it doesn't really explain the surveillance, because whenever they do something they're not supposed to, they suffer consequences,
right.
Without giving it away. They affect the environment in an untoward way, badly enough that they're like, oh, fuck, yeah, get rid of this.
Yeah, but there's no cameras. So it's like, how do they know?
I mean, I guess if you got a floating platform, you can have these ethereal surveillance cameras.
Yeah.
Why not?
It makes me wonder what the rest of like, if they have something like that, like what is the rest of that world like? I mean, I know that's not something that they're ever probably going to explore, but that's probably got to be some kind of like oddly advanced civilization where they're doing something like that. Because like really the only outside look that you get is the cooks cooking everything, and then that one lady, and that's it. Everything else is...
That's what I wondered about the cooks is, are they part of the experiment, or are they part of the research team, whoever's performing it?
Right.
Because
I don't know.
I assume whether they're part of the experiment or not, they represent the top 1%. The food, basically food is king in that experiment.
Yeah.
So the people that own the food, I guess they represent the top 1%. And as it goes down, it's the class system until you get all the way down at the bottom where people are just starving and resorting to all sorts of horrible things.
Yeah.
But how did the kid get in there?
Yeah. I have no idea how the kid got in there. I mean, like I said, they have to gas you and put you in there. Mm-hmm. And so unless that lady was in there and somehow managed to have a kid with somebody and like go through all of that and then raise a kid to however old that kid is.
Wasn't there a time limit on that though?
A time limit to how long you could be on there? Yeah,
how long you could be in there. Like, I don't think I ever heard anybody refer to being in there for longer than a year. I could be wrong though.
I think there was. I don't know that it was a year or not, so I don't want to say like a definite time. But yeah, like there's just like all these like weird kind of coincidences that it's just like, oh, it's like she's like, if you're looking at the stuff that kind of like makes like the film weird and like not so great. Yeah, like that's definitely one of them. It's like the kid is a crucial part, and it's like I know they had to work the kid in there somehow, but also all the other rules that they put forth to get that kid in there, just it's very confusing.
Yeah.
But there is that whole thing of like the class system that you mentioned as well, where it's like, and they even mention it, and when he's talking to his bunkmate, and he asks him, he was just like, why would you spit on their food or whatever? And, like, then he's like taking a piss or whatever and like doing all this other like nasty stuff. And he's like, why should I care? He's like, they're below us. Like, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So, it's like at the top, you have like this like insanely Michelin star restaurant kind of style run by like a Spanish Gordon Ramsay, just like yelling at everyone for perfection. Mm-hmm. And then, like it just gets lowered and, like the first people, it's first come, first serve. And they're like, like they get like the finest food. And then like, as it goes down, it's like the lower you are societally, like the less that you have. Right.
And what's funny is it's not like these people remain at the top. Mm-hmm. They go to the bottom and then they come back up. So all of these people at some point have known what it's like to be at the bottom. But yet when they get to the top, they still treat the people at the bottom like shit.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I would say that's kind of accurate as the way the world operates a lot.
Yeah, I think there's some people, I would say very few, like if you're going to look at the way like the film is set up and then like look at society, I mean, you're talking about people that are like coming from like the hood or, like some place where there's just the likelihood of you making something of yourself is slim. Like you're probably just going to die there. Right. And so then you get wrapped up in this like glamorous over the top kind of lifestyle and you just kind of lose yourself. Right. And you don't become the same person. You're like, oh, well, like screw all those people. Like, like, why am I going to hang out with, somebody that, doesn't make as much as I do or can't afford to go on like these, luxury trips, this, that, or the other thing. And then, they get like the kickback where it's like, now you're not making as much or like, oh, like, now you're not relevant. Like you put out like 2 good albums and they were really good hits. And then you put out 3 shitty ones and now no one cares about you. So it's like back to the slums you go. And it's, so, I mean, a lot of that film, even if they didn't have that whole plot point with the little girl, like they actually could have done without that and still wrap that film up pretty nicely. I do get like the message that they were trying to get with that. But like, even if you didn't have that on there, that whole kind of examination of society and how people really just like forget where they are based on their environment. That's one of the reasons why I was like, I got to write something on this because it's more than just a horror movie, and it's more than just your average like sci-fi film. They're really taking like a pretty deep dive look into how society acts and how people react to things. So,
So moving back to your Podcast. On one of your episodes, extreme horror writer Aaron Beauregard spoke about the fact that even though his content is dark and disturbing, it's actually helped people by being cathartic. And in one instance, actually got a war veteran who never spoke due to PTSD to actually say the words, "Holy shit," after reading, I guess, a particularly fucked up scene in one of his novels. Mm-hmm. And not long after that, I was listening to your episode on mental health. And with regard to depression, do you feel that writing or, even consuming dark subject matter is beneficial to your mental health as well as your readers by being cathartic, or do you feel that it can sometimes have the opposite effect?
Absolutely. I mean, there's this whole thing of like journaling or, getting your feelings out on paper. And it's like, even if you're not talking to anybody about how you're feeling, and then I would say, like, at a certain point, like, yeah, like, if you're really that close on the edge and stuff, like, go and talk to somebody. But I think a lot of the times, especially now in like the society that we live in, it's all like a very fast pace, like, give it to me now. I don't want to wait. This is how you have to dress. This is how you have to talk. This is, these are the friends that you're going to hang out with. And it's all this like very kind of veiled, rigid social system that we have to go through. And it beats down on people. And I think for somebody to say like they haven't had any kind of like violent thoughts before, or, like they have a lot of anger and they don't know how to express it. It's just writing your feelings down that way or what you're experiencing is like the first step into kind of like self-help in a way, and then if you can take those frustrations and shape them into different characters and put them through the throes and everything, even though you're telling a story to everybody else, I mean, you could put your emotions in there and sort your emotions out while you're writing that kind of material. And a lot of the times, even when you're not writing horror, there's been people that I've talked to that, they write dramas or, comedies or romances. It's like a lot of that stuff, you're not going to sit down and write anything and not have some semblance of who you are not appear in the writing. So it's like, even if it's something that like, if it wasn't bad and if it's something like, maybe it's like a happy memory that you have, maybe, for instance, like if somebody went swimming, right? Swimming is a really good kind of topic to explore for this, right? So say if you go swimming, you have a really good time and, like your friends were there and everything. And if you start writing and you're making stories, at some point in time, you're going to look back and you're going to be like, oh, well, 50 to 60% of what I wrote, there's either they went swimming with their friends or they really like to be in the water. There's going to be some kind of like positive attribute in your writing to water that's attributed to that. Whereas like if it's negative, like, oh, like I went swimming and I almost drowned, or like, I got like bit by a shark or something, or, I had some kind of like traumatic experience, like that kind of stuff is going to follow you too, and will some way wind up back in your writing. But yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, like writing is just super cathartic, whether you're going to be sharing with people or not. So, I mean, like, even if it's not something that is directly related to something that you've experienced, it might just be something that you've seen. So, yeah, I think writing for everybody is super important, even if you're not going to put a story out there or publish it or anything. It's a way for you to just, you're not looking at anything at the internet, you're not on your phone. You're not getting like stressed out by like the crazy people in society. It's just you and the paper or the screen and typing and just like relaying, like what kind of emotions you have going inside you. And I mean, even if it's something that's just like completely incoherent, where it's like, you could look at it and read it and be like, I understand what's going on in this, versus like if somebody else read it and they were just like, I don't even know what you're talking about, kind of thing. The writing is super important. And then when you get to the point where you start sharing that kind of stuff, yeah, like what you're saying, like with the veteran who like he never talked before and then he was reading it, it's that whole emotional factor. And it's like we all, to a degree, experience the same things, not in the exact same way, but I mean, a lot of the life experiences that we have are not unique to ourselves. So, you know, especially with veterans, there's a lot of stuff that, you know, they just don't talk about. Like my father, he worked for the VA and he worked with a lot of veterans, and some of the things I remember like sitting down and talking to some of them, and they'd be telling me a story, and it was, some of the stories they told me were intense, and then they would get to certain points and they would just like blank out and stop talking. And it was like, I could tell that the story was still going on in their head, but they had just gotten to a point where they're like, this is like, it's so traumatic and they've never spoken about it before. Mm-hmm. So then it's like, they're just kind of like
to give life to it.
Right. Yeah. And it's like, you could tell that it's like, they're ready to talk about it, but then it's like, they're also like, they're talking to a little kid and they're like, I don't want to tell them that, you know? So, yeah, I think a lot of it, you know, it's just understanding that a lot of the experiences that we have are similar or are enough to spark other emotions in people, which give way to them either, you know, thinking about things in a different way, or trying to approach some of their problems in a different way. You know, sometimes, especially when you're going into the extreme horror stuff, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, I've seen it all kind of thing, but like I had never expected something like that or to read something like that. And it's like, oh, you know, they react to that like, oh shit, what kind of reaction? It's like, I didn't, you know, I've had similar reactions when I've read some stuff from some various extreme horror authors. I don't have PTSD, so I don't know exactly what it is that he read that got him to do that, but you know, he had a reaction, and I would guess that it's positive. So, I mean, I think that's one of the more important things when people are reading, you know, if you could pick up somebody's book and read it front to back and not have any reaction whatsoever, either that is not for them or you just didn't do a good job telling the story.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree as far as it being cathartic. You know, a lot of the stuff that I write and podcast is extremely dark, and I don't know how it is for people that consume it, but when I am putting it out there, it's enjoyable, which is weird considering some of it, but just it's like just purging this stuff out of you. And you know, one of the main reasons I took up podcasting is for my own PTSD from my job. It's it's cathartic as well as therapeutic. And it's funny, literally yesterday, I got a message from a listener that hadn't commented on any of my stories or posts for a while, that used to do it quite often. And she was telling me how she had to take a break from dark content. Like not just, it was not just mine. It was other stuff, you know, I'm not sure what it was, whether it was books or movies or so on. But she was like basically saying, hey, I'm sorry about the radio silence, but I've had to like just go cold turkey because I guess paraphrasing, I think she was trying to tell me it had all started to kind of crush her soul. So, I mean, I guess it depends on the person. Like me personally, I had to quit watching the news and quit listening to political podcasts because I started that. I used to never listen to anything like that. And then the pandemic hit and I started, and I must have done it for close to 2 solid years. And it just got to the point where I was like, you know what, there's nothing I can do about any of this. So I'm just going to stop ruminating on it. And so I can kind of appreciate what she's going through in relation to that material. But I recently saw, you haven't seen Vortex, have you? The new Gaspar Noé?
No, I think you had sent me a message about like watching it or something. And I don't know. Did you watch it in theaters or is it out on
theater?
In theater? Okay.
Yeah, I think it just got released here in the U.S. But, you know, that is a hard movie to watch as far as, you know, this elderly couple succumbing to dementia and heart problems and all of this, and the struggles of the son and the grandson dealing with it. Like there was one point where I damn near cried. But it didn't crush my soul, you know, like that in itself was cathartic because it was a realistic portrayal of life.
Right.
And it was so realistic, you know, like whenever people talk about Alzheimer's or dementia and stuff like that, they'll talk about the mom that forgets her son's name or the one that gets lost in the neighborhood and can't find her way back to her house. But they don't talk about when your mom or your father, something in their brain chemistry gets tweaked to where they start having like hypersexual urges. And, you know, because it's not dignified.
Right.
It's something people just, oh, no, I don't even want to think about, you know. And I mean, he has a little bit in that. So, I mean, he didn't hold back. He covered all aspects. Right. So, yeah, I can't say that consuming dark content is bad for me unless it's political.
Yeah, I mean, I try to stay. I mean, you know, from coming on the Generic podcast, like, that's like one of the only things is like I tell all my guests, I'm like, no hate speech and no political stuff, and those are like literally the only two things. Like I don't like you can talk about literally anything else, but yeah, like I took a break from, well, I shouldn't even say a break because I'm probably never using it again unless, you know, somebody's like, you need it for, you know, your content or whatever. But like I stepped away from Facebook because it was just, that was like during the whole Black Lives Matter thing. And there was a very strange thing because like I'm mixed, so I'm Black and I'm white. So a lot of people either think I'm white or Spanish. And so, like, I've had people say some, like, off-the-wall racist stuff to me before, and they're like, you know what I mean? And I'm like, no. Like, I like, you know, like, I don't, you know, I like, you know, even if I wasn't, you know, raised Protestant, you know, I would still want to be accepting of everyone, you know, like, so, like, when people, you know, started getting into that kind of stuff, and it was just like I would go on, and it's just like, oh well, you'd have white people attacking, you know, Black people on threads and vice versa, and then it would go like somehow like somebody would say something about, you know, like the gay community or like LGBTQ and everything, like, and I'm just like, how do you even devolve into these like random conversations about, like, especially with people of color, it's just melatonin, it's an evolutionary trait. And so like you get into like all these like weird baseless conversations, and it's just like these are things that like nobody face to face would ever have, you know. And it's like, so then I was just like, I'm going to take a break from that. And then you know, then you have Twitter is probably just as bad, you know, without like everything either has to be politicized or like, you know, you're talking into like this echo chamber where it's like somebody will says something and then everybody else agrees with them, and that other like that like one other person is like, well, actually, like, can we look at it in a different lens? And everyone is like, I hope you get hung by your intestines and like fuck your family and like you damn idiot, and by the way, here's their address. And it's like, dude, like, why are you guys so angry, man?
Yeah, it's more, I mean, it's like the fact that you're so far removed from these people, it just brings out the worst in people. It's like, because I'm not standing in front of you and I don't know you personally, and I will probably never see you in real life, I feel no compunction about saying some of the most horrific fucking shit I've ever said to a human being in my life. And if you're hidden completely, like you have the anonymity of a handle that's not even related to your name, God help you, the kind of messed up shit you say. Yeah, it's weird how it's almost like social media, the minutia of interacting with somebody over social media just completely short circuits your limbic system, like in The Sadness, where you're just like, all of a sudden, all that fucked up shit that goes on in my head, I just want to spew to everybody.
Yeah, this is a pretty good comparison. I mean, like some of the stuff that I've seen on there is like, you know, I've unfriended people before, and like they'll reach out and they'll be like, how you like took me off of all your platforms. I'm like, yeah, man, like I've known you for years and you've never said anything like that before. And then, you know, you went on and said something and like people started asking you about it and like you just kept attacking them. Like, I don't know that person, you know? And so like that whole sense of like, well, I'm removed and like, like this isn't even my real name. And, I can say whatever I want. And it's just like, I mean, yeah, you can, but like the screen you're looking at there's like another person behind there. And so like you can't, you got to treat everybody with respect and kindness at the end of the day.
You're not playing a video game.
Right. If I'm playing a game and I like blow your face off or something and I tell you to suck it, like that's probably just because, that's the whole like kind of like gamer culture thing. But like after that, I'm probably going to tell you that like we had a good game or something. But, I mean, there's a whole level of like toxic gaming culture as well, which I mean, I could go on like a whole other hours rant about.
Well, I guess the video game analogy was more to the fact that you're interacting with a real person rather than a computer construct that, where what you say actually does have real world consequences.
Right.
So,
I mean, like you could be saying something to somebody. It's kind of like I don't even want to say like there's studies, but just like the different literature that's been put out about, like mental health. That's like another reason that I wanted to put that other piece out there for my blog. And like I even struggled. Like I had read some different things, and that article was going to be a lot longer. And I was like, you know what, like maybe I'll just like condense it, and then I might like ask some people when I have more guests, like if that's something that they want to talk about. But the whole perspective of like the glamorous lifestyle kind of thing of Instagram, and it's like, and I guess it's just social media in general. It's like you see all this stuff and you're like, wow, these people are living like their best life, this, that, and the other thing. And it's like, it could just be that like one backdrop in their house that they cleaned up, and then like they're actually homeless, or they seem like super cheery, but like their mom's dying of cancer, and their dad left or something, and they've got like 3 siblings that they have to take care of, and they don't mention any of that because that's not part of their persona online. So it's like you never really know what anybody else is going through, and so like getting on social media and like understanding that, and then seeing how other people interact with each other, a lot of times it's like I just had to distance myself from most of it. So I just kind of hang out on Instagram. That's it.
Yeah, I kind of do the same. I do see some people post some somewhat goofy shit, but for the most part, it seems like Instagram is kind of where you go for art, whether that be painting, photography, modeling, just, it seems like Twitter is where you go if you just want to argue and say horrible shit. Yeah. Facebook is where you go if you want to post pictures of your family. I guess I don't know. It's been forever since I've been on Facebook, but I kind of dig Instagram. I've met quite a few interesting people, especially writers. Yeah. But actually, to kind of piggyback off of what we've been talking about, on one of your episodes, you talked about toxic fandom. And, I'm obviously not well known enough to attract any of that kind of attention, but I was wondering if you had ever dealt with any sort of trolling or anything like that related to your projects, whether that be posting things on social media or your blog or your podcast. I know some platforms you can comment. Have you ever?
I haven't noticed anything particularly on my end. Unfortunately, I mean, I don't really have too many people that comment on my stuff. I did have, most recently, I made all the episodes available on like Amazon Music and Apple Podcasts and everything. And I think you can leave like comments and stuff like that on Apple Podcasts, but I haven't checked any of that. I'll probably do more of that this weekend just because I have some more episodes to repost on like the main podcast page on Instagram. But I haven't gotten any kind of negative comments or anything on that. I mean, I think the most negative comments that I've gotten about anything that I've written online has either been, like somebody would get mad at opinions that I might have on like an anime or a film or something, and they'll be like, well, I don't agree with that, and you're stupid. And I'm like, look.
See, why can't it just be constructive? Like, I don't agree with that. End.
Yeah.
You're fucking stupid.
Tell me why you don't agree about it. I love having discussions with people that are like, I have the complete opposite opinion of this movie than you do. And it's like, okay, cool. Well, like, let me know why you liked it. And then like, I might go back and watch it again and try and view it that way and understand it a different way. But yeah, I think even if I did have any kind of negative comments or anything, I'd just ignore it. Like I'm always looking for something that's constructive. So like if somebody was going to be like, your show sucks. Okay, well then it's not for you. But like if you say your show sucks because it's like, I don't like the topics that you talk about because you don't explore them enough, or, something around those lines, or like, I don't like your voice or something, I don't know. I know people could be like super toxic, so I'm not too great at it, but, yeah, I haven't experienced anything to write home about where I'd be like, man, like I'm going to go to sleep and that one comment's going to stick with me.
Yeah, I think I have comments turned off on YouTube. That seems to be from Joe Rogan. He's not on YouTube anymore, but when he was, he said, "Yeah, man, I just had to stop looking. It's because it's hard not to react, and once you react, they've got you. Like then you can't stop because it's like you're conceding. Yeah, you're right. I suck, or whatever they said."
Yeah, a lot of the times with social media, and I know some people probably hate it, but I'll just direct message people if it's something that I want to comment on. Mostly because I don't want to get detracted by somebody else saying just something just completely off the walls and go off the rails, So like a lot of the times when I am looking at the comments, I'm like, just don't comment. Don't comment. Just read through some of the comments that are grabbing my interest, and then just like get the hell out of there. It's like it's the comment section, no matter what the content is, regardless of whether the content maker is putting out there, I'd say like 8 or 9 times out of 10, the content is not what's going to get you in trouble. It's the comment section, which is, again, it's just everybody is just so removed, and it's like you don't have that face-to-face interaction. So it's like that weird kind of position that social media is in, where it's like, yeah, it introduces you to a whole bunch of different people and like all their opinions and everything, but then there's that humanistic factor of like, I'm not actually talking to them directly, so I can say whatever I want, and the consequences don't seem as severe.
Well, I guess to kind of redirect it back to artistic endeavors, maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I think I watched that movie Habit. It was written and directed by Harry Fessenden. You familiar with him at all?
I am not. I know when I was on the episode talking with
one of your
Tyler
guests.
Geis. Tyler Geis has him on his show.
Oh wow.
He had him on one of the episodes of the Tyler Geis Basement. And he was talking to him about the different works that he's done. So
yeah, I watched his movie Habit, and I was actually blown away by how good the cinematography, directing, editing, and for the most part, I would say the acting was, considering the small budget. So what I wanted to know was, what is a movie or movies that were low budget that you've really been impressed with? Not necessarily so much for the acting, but they were just shot superbly. Because I know you are kind of a minor in film, right now? Is that correct?
Yeah. So, I mean, I wouldn't even really go as far as to name specific ones, but if anybody is looking for like great low budget either shows, because some of them they make a couple different ones, and then just like different like short films, both channels, Dust and Alter, on YouTube, they put out.
Second one?
The second one is Alter. Like if you're gonna if you're gonna sacrifice something on an altar.
Okay.
And so they do, it's all independent horror films. Dust is all independent science fiction films. And there's just like if I was going to, keep going with film, after I graduate and actually just go into film school, that would be like what I would be doing. It's like making different, shorts, but some of the acting in there in the different, films that they have is superb. And one of the reasons why I always recommend those two channels is they're a lot of the times they're very low budget films, but because of the time spans that they have, they're like, you'll get episodes. Like I think the shortest episode I saw was like 3 minutes. And then the longest episode that I saw was like, over 45 minutes. But it's like they're condensing all this stuff and they're telling this story, and you're seeing all the different ways that they're making their budget work for them. And they're just done so well. I mean, not all the time, but the majority of the time they're done very well. And it's like you get the actors that you probably never heard of before that are, they'll start out in one, and then you'll go and you'll watch like another one, and you're like, hey, I recognize that person. Like they were in one from, like a year or so ago. And then like you'll see them in another one, and then like, then you start seeing them more and more, and you're like, man, like, they're both good platforms for people that it's like, if you're going into acting and it's like you want to get out there, those are two channels that you want to be on. And I think like because I had one of the animators who was on an episode, they featured one of his animated episodes on Dust, and they reach out to all sorts of independent filmmakers and small film crews and everything. So I mean, I don't really have any like movie recommendations. I mean, all the low budget movies I generally watch are like super cheesy. Like Tyler told me about The Winter Beast that was on Shudder, and that is like, if you like claymation and just kind of like, what the hell did I just watch films, that The Winter Beast is a good film to watch. And then of course you have The Human Centipede 2 and 3, which are just absolutely
I've never seen any of those movies. Those are low budget.
Oh man. I think the first one had like a decent budget, and then like it just they just turned into like passion projects.
Okay. Yeah, I've never seen one. I didn't even know there was a 2 and a 3.
Oh yeah.
But I think I've seen the South Park episode.
Yeah, but there's a lot of I think like a lot of like the lower budget stuff that I like is like the classic Twilight Zone, Outer Limits, that kind of stuff. When you start getting like the black and white movies, where it's like back then it might have been like a big budget, but like now it's not. It's just. So yeah, I mean, definitely check those two channels out on YouTube.
Have you seen Climax before, Gasper Noé?
I have not.
That, I mean, I'm sure it had a reasonable budget because he was using professional dancers, but I think most of them were not trained actors. Like he just got dancers and found 1 or 2 or 3, I guess, that were just happened to be naturally talented actors. But it all takes place in this building. That's it. But wow. It is shot so well, and the storyline is so good, and the acting. I can't believe that the main woman in this movie pulled off such a great job that she did. And that was the same with Julia Ducournau in Titane. I had no idea. I forget her name, the star of the show. She was amazing. They found her on Instagram. It was her first full-length feature, for her first leading lady full-length feature. So
wow. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talent out there, which is another reason that I really like Instagram, because there's that whole visual aspect of it. It's not so much about what you're reading, it's about like what they're presenting. Or some of it can be pretty over the top with like their production value and everything nowadays, but there's a lot of cool actors that are actors and actresses, I guess. Which is also Titane is also on my list of films to watch. I want to sit down and watch Titane and the other film we were just talking about earlier. Well, we've been talking about a lot of films. The one that was on Shudder that got taken off.
Oh,
Martyrs. Yeah. I had planned to sit down and watch both of those back to back. That I might need a shower after that.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Martyrs. I would say in the level of extreme violence, I mean, if you didn't need a shower after the sadness, then you'll be fine with Martyrs. Because the sadness, I mean, even I was like, what the fuck? But I mean,
so actually, yeah, I watched the sadness and then I went to bed. So no issue.
Yeah, so you're fine with Martyrs. If you can do that, Martyrs is a walk in the park.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, with regard to your own writing projects, I was listening to the episode with Alan Baxter, and he was talking about one of his writing tricks or maneuvers. When he finishes the first draft, he'll set it aside and he'll go work on some other project. And then when he comes back, he will change, I believe, the font size so that it's the same content, but to his brain, it looks like different content. So he says he's able to see mistakes and edit better than he would if he hadn't affected the font size. So in your own writing, do you employ any tricks, maneuvers, tricks of the trade?
Yeah, I do a few of them, and I'm super excited to start getting back into my writing in a hopefully a few more terms after things start to hopefully die down. So I'll write it. Like I have quite a few different manuscripts that I've written, and they're just set aside for now. So one of the things that I do is I try to remember the reason I wrote them and then what goes on in them. And I make a film inside my head. So this is more of like a long-term kind of thing for me. I'm a super slow writer. So I'll make a film in my head and then I will think of my story as it is in my head. So when I'll go back and I'll read it and I'll circle things that I'm like, this wouldn't fit. Because a lot of times when I read, I have that like very vivid visualization of what's going on. So I'll go back and then I'll circle stuff. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll put it on a different font. Not so much change the font size, but I might change either the spacing. And then one of the other things I do, which kind of makes me hyper-focused because I hate the grainy computer voices, but I'll go chapter by chapter and I'll have my computer read the chapters out to me. And that's a lot of the times how I'll catch if things sound really weird, and I'll go back and I'll read it out loud and I'll be like, okay, yeah, that does sound weird. And then I'll circle it and then I'll edit it that way. So, I mean, I have one story that I'm going to run through one more edit, and then that one I'll start shopping that around. But yeah, like I go through all sorts of kind of different editing processes, and I think it's I want to say I have OCD, but it might be of like some kind of like weird ADHD induced OCD where like I have to continuously go back and edit stuff. Which is another reason why like even my blog postings are very inconsistent. Like the one I wrote for the platform took me a month and a half to write. And then like I put one out for Ultraman and that took, I think like 3 weeks for me to put out. So yeah, I mean, it depends on how deep you want to get into your editing and what works for you. But I was happy when he was explaining how he does his editing that I wasn't the only one that did seemingly odd things when they're editing. It helps. So.
Okay. So when you say shop around, are you talking about self-publishing, or do you mean like you're going to put a query letter out there and send some stuff to Simon and Schuster?
I don't know if I don't, if Simon and Schuster, like if I don't even think like I could send something to them and they'd even look at it. Like I suck at writing query letters.
Well, I imagine something like Simon and Schuster. You probably have to have a literary agent, but just like, is that what you were talking about doing? Was shopping it around to a major publisher, or?
No. So I mean, I would definitely just go and try and find an agent. I mean, there are some things that I'm going to self-publish. There's a couple shorter stories that I'm working on right now that I'll probably just put up on my blog, just to give people an idea of like how I write and what kind of things they should be looking forward to. But a lot of it is really just because I have no idea what I'm doing. Like, I've been to conventions and everything, and I've talked to different people, but it's like actually going and doing all those things, as far as, getting an agent or self-publishing or any of that kind of stuff. It can be pretty daunting. So I think with this one, it's the one that I want to start shopping around to agents pretty soon. That one is like a full length. It is a full length novel. And then for some of the shorter works that I have, those ones I'll probably try and self-publish. But then that's just a matter of personal funds. It's like, do I have enough money to do that right now? No. So the agent is probably like the best way to go for me.
The one you're talking about, that's a full-length novel that you want to shop around. What genre would you call it?
Oh, so it's supernatural horror. One of my friends was saying that, like, I could probably even say that it's like spiritual horror. Like, it is very, like, it is a lot of the things that, like, I've learned along the way of being like Pentecostal. Like, there's a lot of Christian mythology in it. There's a lot of African and Greek mythology in it. It explores the afterlife a lot. So the whole premise is like this guy, he kills himself in the beginning of the book, and it takes place in, like, the book is called The First 5 Seconds, and it takes place in between the time where, like, he's actually dying to the time where, like, he is now in, like, 100% in the spiritual realm, and he's just touring hell the whole time. And it's like, it's kind of like the prequel to the rest of your existence kind of thing. So it's just all his experiences and what he's going through. So it's
interesting.
Pretty, I feel it's pretty out there. I had a lot of, like, I started writing it when I was trying to find other books that were like Silent Hill. I don't know if you're familiar with that video game franchise, but if not my favorite franchise, it is one of my favorite franchises. And it's just, at least like the first 4 games are super solid and just like messed up. And then like the second one is like a lot of people's favorite one. And I don't know if you ever saw Jacob's Ladder at all.
Yes.
But the second game is heavily based off of that. Like, they drew a lot of inspiration from that film when they made the second game. So I was like, if there's not any other books that are like that out there that just play with all these different kind of aspects in writing, so I'm going to go ahead and do it and hope people like it when it comes out.
Nice. So would you say that it's, you said it's pretty out there. When you say supernatural fiction, you're not talking like Dean Koontz. You're talking about a little more extreme.
Yeah, there's a lot of extreme violence in there. There's a lot of like dimensional shifts and like weird point of views. Like, there's one section where seamlessly writing 4 different point of views.
Oh, okay.
And it's confusing. Like, you have to take your time and actually like break it down and read it over and over. And I like purposely put it that way. So there's a lot of things that, like, in other books, people are like, don't do these things. And I'm like, I'm going to try it. Yeah. So,
well, see, that's one of the questions I wanted to ask. Who was it? Alan Baxter. Mm-hmm. He was talking about how, I don't know if you would relate your book as being dark fiction or not, but dark fiction, some of the more abstract avant-garde type stuff, is kind of a niche genre. Mm-hmm. So if you're looking, on websites like Amazon for something to read, you're probably going to come across a lot of really good stuff that's going to have 3 stars or less, or whatever metric they're using. So
yeah.
Do you think there's a novel way, no pun intended, of marketing content like that to where, the people that want the content will find it? Because, if the mass majority of the mainstream just isn't into that, it makes it kind of hard for the people that are into it to find it.
I think it's just a matter of making people aware of it, right? Like, a lot of the advertising that people do now isn't even so much from the author. It's from the author interacting with other people, but also making them aware of, like, hey, like, my book is out, or I have a new podcast episode out, or, just like commenting on people's stuff, which that can in itself be a full-time job, going on and interacting with people. But I think that one of the most important things as far as writing goes, and I think just for any kind of medium, is not like, don't just create content and just expect everybody is going to like find it and love it. Even like when I look, like sometimes like, I'm right about to hit 250 listens, on the episodes that I put out so far, which like a lot of people say like, oh, that's not much. But like, if I was in a room and there's 250 people and they were all listening to me speak on a subject, like that's a lot of people, So I think one of the important things is just making sure that people are aware that you're putting content out before it's actually out, and talking about it and getting the different kinds of dialogue going. And then, once it's out, I feel like it's more just like a word of mouth thing, like even what you're saying, there's plenty of like 2 and 3 star books that are out there that are really good. It's just they're not hitting their target audience. And again, that comes back to like, the constructive comments. I think if more people put time into their comments as far as like, oh, well, this book sucked, or like, this was the most wretched book I've ever read. It's just like, well, why? Maybe somebody is looking for that like over the top violent book that makes you, feel like you need to take like an Epsom salt bath and like peel your flesh off and like get like a new layer of skin or something, or, or maybe there's that book where it's just like, it's so fluffy and full of like, happy emotions or whatever, that it's like people are, some people could be put off by like a really like happy-go-lucky kind of story. Maybe that's something that somebody really needs. So I think that, like getting people aware of stuff, whether it be my content or anybody else's, a lot of it is being intentional, not only for the creator, but people that are giving that feedback as well. So, and, if you have an agent, I would hope that part of their job would, entail that they're also helping to boost, some, I won't want to say relevancy, but they're boosting the awareness of the work that somebody is putting out. So, I want to just, I know some authors and some artists do this, but they already have that gigantic following. But when you're first starting out, like I wouldn't get my book picked up by an agent and then have them shop it around to get published, have it get published. And then on like the day it gets published, be like, hey y'all, I have a book out. Like, no, like I'm talking about it. I'm talking about one of them now, I've been talking about for a couple of years, which is how long it's been taking me to like edit and everything. But just to like be like, oh yeah, like I have a new film out today. And it's just like, well, okay, you told everybody online, but only like 5 people saw it. And so it's like, is anybody going to see your stuff? No. Is it really good? Possibly, but like no one knows. So yeah, there's a lot of factors that are involved in stuff like that. So yeah, he definitely hit it on the head when he was talking about how to market stuff and how to get content out there. So.
Well, so we know a lot about your writing and podcasting. Do you dabble in any other artistic mediums like painting, playing an instrument, anything like that?
No, I had wanted to play the guitar when I was younger. I think a lot of people did. But again, like, I grew up listening to metal music kind of like in hiding kind of. I remember like I would listen to 9 Inch Nails a lot because I loved like the way that Trent Reznor layered a lot of his earlier music. And I just like love the complexity of it, that I never really like paid attention to the lyrics. I was just paying attention to like how he put everything together. And I would listen to other, industrial and metal artists that were out there in that time, but I always got grounded for it. I remember like one time my dad like came in and like he just like unplugged my stereo, and like I don't know if he threw it away or what he did, but he was like, nope. He's like, you're not listening to this stuff. There's like that weird fear of, there's that whole stigma of a lot of kids after Columbine that it's like if you're going to listen to that kind of darker kind of music that you were going to become like some like druggie or like shoot up a school or something. So like that whole thing never really flew off. And we had neighbors and everything, so like they didn't want to hear some kid trying to practice playing the guitar. Yeah. And I did I did dabble a little bit in synthesizers, so it's like I can play some stuff. I'm pretty sucky at reading sheet music. Like I can do it. I have to read it and then like play afterwards. Like I can't just sit there and like some people can have like the whole thing and they're just playing everything, or like they know where all the keys are and everything. Like if I had practiced more, I think I could play an instrument. But as far as like other hobbies and stuff, I just play a lot of video games. When I can. I mean, I don't really have the time to do that right now. Like I have games from like PlayStation 4 that are still in the wrapper, and like I have like games from like PS5 that I haven't touched yet. I did at one point have some times or some different games that were like from like Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 that I didn't touch, and I was like, oh, okay, well, I just don't have the time or whatever. But I can draw some pretty badass stick figures. So if anybody's looking for some stick figure work, I can put some solid lines together with some circles.
Do you get exclusive rights to it? Like, do you get that signed over?
Oh, the stick figures?
Yeah.
Man,
or do you retain some rights?
Right. Hopefully I get some kind of,
well, no, that's what I'm saying. Do I get exclusive rights if I buy the stick figure?
Oh yeah. I'll sell some stick figure art to people. Get some cool like battle scenes going. Maybe fighting like a
artwork. So
yeah. I'll get right to work on it after this episode. Sweet. I'll get some nice collages of stick figures and maybe they're in like a boiling pot. The witch is brewing their tea with many stick figure people. They're gonna make stick figure soup. But yeah, I mean, really, I go bike riding. I used to do like BMX stuff and like the tricks and all that kind of stuff, but I never got to the point where like I was going to the X Games or something. I think like people that are into that kind of stuff, maybe that's something that they're always kind of in the back of their head. They're like, yeah, I'm going to be like the next Tony Hawk or whatever. And I'm definitely showing my age because I know there's probably people that are way better than Tony Hawk now.
Oh yeah. I couldn't tell you who those are because I'm even older than you. Tony Hawk was
so. When I was growing up, that's who you wanted to aspire to be, is someone,
What's the guy on Ridiculousness? What's his name?
Ridiculousness.
That MTV
man,
show.
Yeah. With the shoe guy, Rob something.
Deerdeck. Yeah.
Rob Deerdeck. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen him skate. I know he is, or was at least, a badass. I don't know how he measured up to Tony Hawk, but
maybe he was in one of the video games or something. I don't know. Maybe. But I mean, I do enjoy watching the X Games when I can get it from time to time. But like, it generally just turns into background noise. Yeah, I mean, I would like to. If I had more free time, I would definitely say that I would want to explore. Like I've always wanted to work on video games, so it's like I follow like Unreal Engine and Quixel and stuff like that. And like, I've dabbled a little bit in like, simple room designs and character designs and stuff, but it's nothing where like, like I am perfectly fine, being experimental, and, putting up the blog posts and understanding how to write better that way and getting the feedback and, having a podcast that, like none of that stuff is absolutely like consistent. But it's like, I'm learning and, like, I hope, it's helping other people, see different points of view and what people are doing. But I wouldn't want to put any of like my Unreal Engine work out there and people will be like, what is this crap? Like I wouldn't spend, it's not even anything that's like playable, it's just like, it'd be like little snippets of like, this is what I'm working on. But like the people that some of the people that I follow that like do that stuff, and like I watch them and I'm like, how are they not like working for somebody? And they're just like putting out all these like crazy artworks and these like different kind of level designers and animation generators and everything. So we'll see. I think I'd have a different answer to that question in another like 4 or 5 years when I get like more of my time back to me.
Yeah, definitely. So like with what you described as far as synthesizer and all that, where did writing evolve from? Like what was the first novel you ever read?
So the first novel that I ever read was probably some shitty school book.
I remember
honest.
mine. It was The Client by John Grisham.
Oh man, the first one that stood out to me. It's funny you bring this up because it's something I'm writing about in my next blog post. Is Battle Royale by Koshun Takami, and that was probably, I want to say, 7th grade. And I hid away in a corner. I was playing Sehnsucht by Rammstein, the whole album. Had that thing on repeat on my awesome Discman.
Amazing German pronunciation, by the way. You just nailed that.
Thank you. Yeah, I've taken German for a few years, so hopefully. Yeah, so I was listening to that, and there's like these bookshelves in the back of the classroom, and I found a way that if I moved them, even if people were sitting there, they wouldn't know I was sitting there. Mm-hmm. And for 2 days straight, I sat down in the class. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like a 668 pages or somewhere around there. It's a pretty decently chunky book. And so for 2 days, I just sat there listening to that album and repeat and reading Battle Royale. And that was like the catalyst. And, I don't really know where like the extreme horror and all that stuff came from as far as like reading and everything. Kind of just, I think those were things that just like fascinated me when I was growing up because they were taboo. So it's like I couldn't bring that stuff in the house.
That was going to be my next question. Was literature censored as well?
Oh yeah. Like video games, films, literature, like all that stuff. It was different too growing up. A lot of the times, like I wasn't even interested in writing or anything. Like I was like super big into nature, and like I still am. But like I would spend tons of time outside. I would find like I would go and I'd catch like snapping turtles in the creeks. And I'd find like different kinds of snakes and stuff and like go climbing trees. Like I would get in trouble a lot for being outside like way longer than somebody should have. But I think that was a lot of kids were like that when I was growing up. So it was just kind of like a different time. And so a lot of my interest in like film and reading and everything didn't really start kicking in until high school when I moved out of my parents' house and started like exploring more of the things that I was interested in. But yeah, I remember I was freaking out because like I wasn't allowed to play Resident Evil, mostly just because of the name. And, my parents walked in and they're sitting there and they're watching me play this game. And, it's super cheesy. Like Resident Evil is a very cheesy game, especially back then with it's just this like bloxy, pixelated looking zombies and everything. And you're just like running around blasting them and trying to get like the 3 pieces of the key together so you can get in the door or like the key card or something. And like, they're sitting there and they're watching it. And I'm like, at that point, it's like I'm already caught. And I was like, I'm not going to get up and just like turn it off real quick because they're going to know that like I'm doing something I'm not supposed to be doing. And so like I just kept playing and they're like, what are you playing? And I was like, oh, I'm playing Biohazard, which is the I don't know if they still go by it. I think they just switched it to Resident Evil, but it used to be the name, the Japanese name for Resident Evil was Biohazard. And so they like sat there and then they're just like, this is pretty interesting. And again, I think that's one of those things where, growing up in the church, people have like these weird, like preconceived ideas about everything.
The church you grew up in, did they have this like just insane aversion to Dungeons and Dragons? Because I never played Dungeons and Dragons because I was not even allowed to get close to that game. For some reason, they thought playing Dungeons and Dragons was the same as sacrificing a baby to the devil.
Yeah, you're going to like the deepest layer of hell, and like Satan is gonna like rip out he's gonna like sodomize you and rip your intestines out and put them back
what
in.
About that game, everybody, because I mean,
I think
when I look
magic.
at it now, what's that?
Yeah, I think it's the whole thing with like the whole magic system, right? Because they didn't like the card game like the 3 main things they didn't like. Magic, the Gathering was like a taboo, super big taboo.
Was that the same time as Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, I think they've both been out equally. I mean, like Dungeons and Dragons is like the tabletop game, and then you have like the Magic the Gathering is just the card game. And then like games like Final Fantasy, anything where there was like a high level of like magic involvement was just like taboo. So, I mean, like I'm pretty sure, like people, when Harry Potter came out, they were probably ripping their hair out. Like, your kids are going to go to hell reading this terrible stuff.
Well, it's funny, back in the day, meditation used to be considered like channeling spirits or whatever and opening yourself up. You're like, I guess because if you do like mindfulness meditation, you're focused on your breath. So therefore you're no longer focused on God. So you're leaving yourself vulnerable to demonic attack. But things have changed now. Like my own mother is always asking me, oh, so you did that float tank thing, the pods where you get in and float in the Epsom salt water, and asking me about just meditation in general. It's like there's been this paradigm shift where now all of a sudden meditation somehow can exist with, like evangelical Christianity. So it's weird how that stuff changes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up, because that was something, when I walked away from, when I was just like, screw it, like I'm not a Christian or anything like that, and so it's like now it's like, if somebody asks, I would say like, yeah, I am a Christian. And like, I try to focus on more of the whole, like, treat everybody equal, be kind to everybody. Like, I don't care what kind of lifestyle you live, like you're still a person. Because, at the end of the day, most Christian faiths, they're supposed to be walking in the path of Jesus and everything. So it's like, he wouldn't judge you based on, if you're straight, gay, black, white, doesn't matter. Like, he just cares about like who you are as a person. So that kind of stuff just really stuck with me. But as far as like, just like all the other kinds of things that happen in the Bible, and you see how like people were possessed and everything, it's like they weren't meditating. So it's like, they would bring that point up every now and then. I'm just like, well, you don't need to meditate to be possessed. Like, you could be taking a dump, or like, sleeping, or, like at work. And, like, if that is going to happen, then it's going to happen, kind of thing. So it's like, I think there's like that weird, like, fear mongering part of it, where it's like, even if you were going to say like, you can't really, like, historically, maybe like the Bible is inaccurate, or like you can't cite everything from it, like as far as like an academic source, there's still things in there that it's just like, if you're going to talk about like possession, like, it doesn't say anywhere in the Bible, like, don't meditate because like you're going to get possessed by demons and God's going to send you to hell. Like, it doesn't say that anyway. So it's like,
I think a lot of this is just man-made prescriptions against different things.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've done meditation before, but, I think my severe ADHD doesn't let me do that, because even when I'm trying to meditate, there is still the moments of, ooh, piece of candy. So
my meditation practice is very sporadic, but when I get into it, I really get into it. And I would venture to say with some certainty that I did have a genuine jhana experience, which is nothing supernatural. It's just a very a state of extreme bliss you can get in when you get into a deep meditative state. It was at the time I was doing it an hour a day. And so about 30 minutes into it, but the problem is once you engage with it, instead of just letting it happen, then it goes away. So I felt it very briefly, but when I did, it was fucking amazing. So I wish I could stick with it, but I just get so, like you said, ADHD, just like, I feel like there's this clock ticking and it's gone down all the way to the last minute. Now it's just the seconds ticking away. So
yeah,
I just need to learn to relax.
Yeah, I mean, I think my biggest thing outside of that is just like, I could never understand meditation. Like, I took I took Taekwondo for 3 years, something like that. And
what
it was
belt
before
did you make it to?
I think it was like on my way to like a green belt or something.
Okay.
I don't know, nothing too extreme. But I mean, I would have made it to a black belt if somebody had told me about UFC. I mean, I would have
probably made it to a black belt if I hadn't shattered my knee into 3 pieces.
Yeah. The stories people don't talk about until you get to like the main major times. But we used to do meditation when I was taking Taekwondo, and there were a couple times that I got in trouble because I fell asleep.
Well, if you're tired, that'll happen.
Yeah.
I took intro to Zen meditation at the Zen Center, and I went there a few times after work where I hadn't gotten that much sleep. And I remember I was on a Seiza bench, so I was in a kneeling position. And Zen meditation, at least Soto Zen meditation, you face the wall so that all external stimuli is blocked out, and you're not technically supposed to close your eyes. You're supposed to leave them kind of cracked. But I kept like nodding off and bumping my head into the wall and making this loud noise. And, there's probably like 10 other people in the Zendo with me, but they're all experienced. They're probably so far into a meditative state they didn't notice. But the abbot, this woman named Galen, I was telling her about it. She's like, I feel like that was a wasted session because I kept nodding off. She's like, no, that's just a very soft meditation. I was like, all right, okay, soft. Well, I'll take it.
There you go. Some progress is better than no progress, I suppose, right?
Well, just to kind of wind things down, I suppose, since we're coming up on the 2-hour mark here. It been good talking to you. Do you have anything you want to plug? Obviously, you've got 2 blog posts up within the last couple of weeks, I think, hot off the presses.
Yeah, so I got a couple I got those couple blog posts going. I think the most recent one is about the sadness. If you are listening to this episode and you haven't guessed it already, I really like that movie. So it's on Shudder. Go ahead and watch that. I do have a couple more blog posts coming out. One of them is a bit more serious. It talks about just kind of some of the things that I've been going through as far as like, creativity, and then like how expensive everything has gone. I was struggling with it for a while, and I don't really promote it, but I do have a Ko-fi page, which is like a donation kind of thing. And so I have something going up on there right now. I don't think anybody has really donated, but I don't, partially just because I've had a hard time keeping up on it. But it's open. It's up to, the goal for that is $1,000. But that is specifically, I don't know if anybody is familiar with some of the Instagram videos that I put out where it's called Generic Hot Book Stuff. And I am working on trying to figure out a good time of when I can bring that show back, because I really enjoyed doing that. But I'll either kind of like a hot food, or like like a spicy challenge, or a hot sauce or something. And the whole time that I'm, writhing in pain, I'm talking about different books in the horror genre. So that's something that I am going to be bringing back. And then the blog post is going to be talking about the future plans for the podcast, the blog, and all the other different kind of writing endeavors that I have. So I have that one. And then I'm working on something right now, probably going to be reaching out to some various folks, but I'm going to be doing probably like at least a 3, maybe 4-part blog post in the same kind of research heavy blog post about the Alien films and the different video games and films that the Alien franchise has influenced over the years. So I'm pretty close to getting part 1 of that out. So I would say just keep a close eye out on the blog page. Nothing extensive on the podcast for right now, just because I don't have any free time. Or I shouldn't say I don't have free time. I have free time when I'm driving home, which I guess is
what you need to do. You need to get one of those mobile setups and just have the ambient traffic noise in the background. Rush hour generic.
Yeah. So, I would say for right now, just keep an eye out on the blog. I'm going to be putting out some pretty cool content there. Sporadically. I mean, nothing is on a schedule right now, since I'm working about 65 hours a week, going to school full time. So, a lot of my time has been eaten up in that.
Balls to the wall.
Yeah. So for right now, writing on because I do, so all of the stuff that you see on the blog has been done. Like I do everything on my phone. So I write everything on my phone. I edit everything. I do all like the pictures and everything. Like everything is done on my phone. And so that's like really the only thing I have time for right now is like, I might read like a book on Kindle, But it's like 5 to 10 pages at a time. Or like I'll go to the bathroom on company time, so I can work on my blog post or something. But like if I do one thing, it's always creative as far as what I want to do. It's always cutting into the time of my schoolwork, or my jobs. So writing right now, the little blog post is about as much free time as I have. And then yeah, if anybody else wants, I guess if anybody else wants to invite me on their podcast, the best thing to do is just to reach out so I can like plan way ahead of time. Like I think this one we planned almost
about
2 months in advance, or a month ago, or
month
something
and a half.
like that.
Yeah,
So
something like that.
yeah, so like I said, Basel Walls, full schedule. So I graduate later this year, so hopefully that'll alleviate some of the pressure, and I'll have a little bit more time to do other things. So, but thanks for having me, man. It's been a blast.
Oh, thanks for being on the show. All links mentioned are in the description. And Generic, I will see you next time.
All right. You have a good one.